Did you notice at the end of the stream yesterday it started getting choppy?
Did it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting,
Just like the last 2 or 3 minutes.
we're getting 90% CPU. 80.
Alright, so where's my push button? There we go.
Yeah, so this will go away automatically. So
The
you
timer
don't-
disappears?
Yeah, so then you just
Oh, cool.
push right there. Yeah.
So it is a true timer for the graphic.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring down the audio. Put out some music. So oh, that's because it was on. That's because it was on this thing. I'm gonna pull it off and actually put it on.
Oh, the audio?
Yeah.
I was gonna say, you had another USB there yesterday. You don't have audio on that, do you?
Yeah.
Were you going live on Hayes and Choppers?
Yeah, I'm live on all of them.
You going to Christians and all of that too?
No. No, I haven't put all them in yet. Where's my assets folder? Yeah, those won't go out till right at 10.
Even though you're live, it doesn't get. You don't get a pop up?
No, not till it's. There they are.
Why? Because you did an invite?
Yeah, because I did it pre-scheduled.
Pre-scheduled.
Yeah.
So pre-scheduled, it doesn't pop up until 10.
Yeah, until it actually is live.
Live. If I go there, we should be able to see it. So like one of those.
Probably put signs on the door saying "Don't disturb" because there's a lot of morons here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's easy to do. I can have Jim print some up right now.
You know what? Leave it alone and just throw them out.
Yeah, that actually might be good content. Still got like 3 minutes, so we're good. It's cold out there today.
Oh shit! Cool with the wind, you know?
Yeah. Those look good.
Yeah, they look good. Here we go.
Right here's the camera we look at.
Over here?
Yep, right here.
Okay.
That's the lens right there. This is just a side shot. And where our audio is coming from. Seconds.
That's the camera right there, right?
Yep. All right, we are live. So welcome everybody. This is the very first Q&A, weekly Q&A. We're going to do these on Wednesdays. This we're doing on Thursday because it's been a crazy week. But next week we'll start doing them Wednesday at 10 a.m. I'm David Foster, and everybody knows who you are. But for those who may not, what's your name?
I'm Paul Sr. from Orange County Choppers. It's like you don't even know how many fucking times I've said that. It's like, I think most people know who I am.
Yeah. What's it like to walk around town? I mean, do you still, like, do people stop you everywhere you go?
Not around town here, you know. Mostly, like I'm doing some stuff in Europe now. Over there, you know, it's new to them, so they you know, a lot of people from over there, or if, down south, mainly down south, big fans down there.
Mm-hmm. Like Florida, well, probably anywhere.
Florida,
that
yeah.
they have
Anywhere
bike
down south.
conventions, right? Milwaukee.
Yeah. It's cool. It's good to know that your fans still, you know, stand by and.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's
No,
good stuff.
and you got a lot of great fans. I mean, I do doing the social media.
I
and
do.
Just seeing the comments and the support and everything from people is amazing. So today, these Q&As are going to be different each week. And Paul kind of came up with the topic this week. He wanted to talk a little bit about, you know, some of the struggles he's had, you know, in business and in life in general. And it's probably kind of a tough subject sometimes to talk about, but, you know, you probably have talked about it a lot, right?
Addiction, yeah. I was in a 12-step program. I did it for 9 years straight.
Oh wow!
Without missing a day. So you know, you get to go to different places and speak about you share experience, strength, and hope. So yeah, I mean, I've never been afraid to hide it. On the show, I've always talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's not. If it could help one person, I'm happy.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's talk about when you first got started into, was it drugs? Was it alcohol? What did it start with, and what was the major?
It was alcohol. Alcohol. It was always my drug of choice. But I used to do maybe a couple drugs here and there.
Couple.
Yeah. But really, I started at an early age. But there's alcoholism in my family.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was like, I remember as a kid, my grandfather was Romanian, and they celebrated Easter at a different time. But anyhow, every Easter they would set the table up, and the dishes and everything, with the blue in them and stuff. But there would always be a shot of whiskey all the way around the table, and it had the yellow and red lines around it. And me and my sister did. We used to sneak, like drink the shot and the bottles and fill it back up. But that was like, when I was a kid, probably, I don't know, 10 years old or something like that, and just kind of experience it, and but I like the feel of it,
Yeah. All right. One second. Let me make sure that we're streaming here. I just want to verify all this.
Stepping on.
Yeah.
It came up.
It is?
Yep.
Okay. So it's on the page and it's showing? Okay. Just wanted to make sure. 'Cause that's the last thing I'm going to do, get in the conversation and then realize it's not on.
Well, it has been on since we started?
Yep. It has. Okay. So how old were you when you had your first, like what led you to have your first drink?
Just probably experimenting. My uncle was an alcoholic, and my father's brother was an alcoholic. There was a lot of alcoholism in the family, so I kind of think that's a gene.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is a disease, alcoholism.
Mm-hmm.
I think that either you have it or you don't. There's a lot of people that could drink a lot sociably, but I could never do that. So I think that the reason why they've considered it for a disease for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
but then the insurance companies were getting screwed on it, so they said no, it's not a disease.
Right.
But it is what it is.
And so, like, when you first got started, it probably wasn't really a problem at first, right?
No, I think it was always a problem.
Because you just, like, when you started,
Yeah.
you're one of those guys that once you do something, you do 100%. And
Well,
don't do it.
yeah, I'm a compulsive person, and I think that's just part of that personality that is prone to alcoholism.
Mm-hmm.
But I could go through the whole history of drinking the wine, filling it back up with water, and but really not until I was probably 18 that I really started,
Mm-hmm.
hammering it a little bit. Yeah.
And so I would assume at 18 you probably had a job, right? So
Yeah, I've always had a job.
Were you drinking while you were working, or?
Well, I don't think I drank while I was working back in the day when I just had jobs. But
Mm-hmm.
once I got my own business, yeah, I pretty much drank every day.
So when you were 18, what were you doing at that time, job-wise?
Just odd stuff, carrying shingles up roofs and masonry. I actually worked for a moving company every summer,
Mm-hmm.
which was a pretty tough job. But I always, I could stay out all night, and I'd still. The one thing I always did, even through the end, is I always went to work the next day.
Well, we always called those. We'd go out on Monday night. We called them Tuesday morning crawl because you would go to work still kind of
Yeah,
drunk.
I did that many times.
Yeah. So at what point during all of that did you realize that you had a problem?
The thing of it is that I think the thing with alcohol is, and I think it's not just me, but I think it's everybody is, it starts out as fun, a lot of fun,
Mm-hmm.
and you do that, so you really don't recognize it as for me, I didn't recognize it as a problem until later on in life, because I always thought that, at any given time, I could just stop what I'm doing. And it's funny because I remember seeing the movie on TV or the TV shows that the guy would go in the army, and come back and he was all brand new.
Right.
That's not true. But I think that alcoholism is progressive, so it continues to get worse and worse. Okay, and then for me, by the time I recognized it, it was too late.
Right.
And you experiment through the years of I'm not drinking today. Maybe drink a little cough syrup. Because that's justifiable.
Right.
Or you would take 3 or 4 days off, and and you would convince yourself, well, if you can do that, then you really don't have a problem. But I think at some point, at some point it becomes a nightmare, because when you realize that it is a problem and you're destroying the family and you're destroying yourself. For me, when I got to that point, it was just I couldn't stop. So even though I was aware of all those, all the destruction of what it was doing, I couldn't stop drinking. And it gets, for me, it was like being in a dark hole. You know what I mean? And you just kept going down and down. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I think for people that are having a good time with drinking now, at some point it's not fun anymore.
Well, and did you have, were there buddies that you had that drank with
Always.
you, and then along the line, did some of them stop and you kept going, and did that affect, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you know what? I had a business when I was 20-something years old, and I had that same steel business for, 28 years, but, everybody that worked for me drank, otherwise you didn't work for me, And so it was just, it was 3 o'clock or whatever it is, this bottle. Everybody went to get the liquor at the liquor store, and then you would start drinking. But really, I had a partner also, and when you say did they stop or did I continue to drink, I got sober in 1985, and I had a partner, and he didn't, and he died, like a year after I got sober. But he tried on and off to get sober, but he couldn't do it. So, I had a lot of the people that worked for me died from either drugs or alcohol, and I probably should have too, you know what I mean? But I guess that wasn't God's plan,
Yeah, kind of like living the musician lifestyle.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
So, what was the hardest part quitting for you? I mean, did you go through the shakes and withdrawals and
it's funny. It's funny because I drank. I was Olympic gold medalist drinker. I would have won the gold medal for sure. So I drank hard. I drank straight up whiskey all the time, and so I could drink a quart of whiskey no problem. And I've done it. I've done it in afternoons when working up on steel and knock a quart of whiskey off and finish the job and then go drink some more. So, it, I forgot the question. See what alcohol does to you?
Yeah.
It's like you lose a lot of brain cells.
Just the moment you realized that it was what you were, like what it was doing. It's like what that felt like.
It's like I said before, when it gets to the point where it's no fun anymore, and then it becomes more of, it starts out like a maintenance thing, you know what I mean? And then again, you know what I mean? When you realize that you can't stop, that's when the horror starts.
So you guys, we're doing this live Q&A. If you have questions, be sure to post them on here. I got to check one thing real quick again. Make sure everything is remote.
Those things suck.
Remote to, there we go. What's that?
I said these things suck. They never work right.
Yeah, no, it's working good. It's just always got to make sure things are still running.
So,
Okay,
is anybody asking any questions?
we got questions coming in.
Yeah, we do. Pulling up from Paul's page, it's doing great on both.
Lots of them.
There's 230.
Questions?
Yeah, comments and questions.
Well,
Stuart
give me one at a time.
wants to know: did you ever do drugs besides just alcohol?
A lot of them. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't think there wasn't a drug that I didn't experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lot, yeah. Lot. You know, I'm from the '60s, so you know they were plentiful. You know,
Mhm.
you know everybody smoked pot, so you know that I did everything, okay, but mostly pot. But the same thing with pot. When you're drinking all the time, at some point, I started waking up in people's houses and not knowing where I,
Right.
you know. So I kind of had to get rid of one or the other, and I chose to get rid of the pot. But
Well,
know,
and so what? Did you find it as hard to quit any of the drugs as it was alcohol? Or?
No. The alcohol was really the hardest thing to quit. You know, so it's like I said with the pot. You know, I smoked that for so many years, but you know, it got to the point where it was like totally out of control. But you know, my drug of choice was always alcohol.
Mm-hmm. So, how did it all affect you? Like, so you said you realized it was affecting your family and all that stuff. How was it affecting your family?
Well, listen, you know, the thing of it is that, you know, I was never home. And when I was home, I came home drunk. And, you know, it just, you know, it's hard to, listen, I came from a dysfunctional family, you know what I mean? So, you know, my girlfriend always says, well, you didn't have a lot of tools in the toolbox. So, you know, growing up the way that I grew up was, you know, it wasn't the norm. So when you don't know the norm, you think that is normal.
Yeah.
So, you know, between that and the alcoholism, you know, when I say it has an effect on the family, it really does, because you know you're coming home drunk every night. There's no relationship with the kids. There's no relationship with your wife, and you know they kind of have to go on without you
Mm-hmm.
because you're really never there.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, after years and years of that, I you know, there's still scars there today.
Yeah. Well, in your town, did the cops all know you by name? I mean, were you like, oh, it's Senior again. What's he doing now?
Yeah, the neighbors always knew who I was, because there was always, every time I came home, pretty much there was the cop car with the lights on, and it was like, okay, he's home. Yeah.
So, I mean, were they cool with you to a point?
Well,
Because
they
things
were
were a little different back then. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because you know a lot of times you'd be drinking and you'd be drunk and they'd pull you over and said, okay, go home.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you'd drive home drunk. You know what I mean? And hit something on the way home. But yeah, it was different. And you know, when you, for some reason or other, you know, when you're up and you have a business, you get a little bit more respect, I guess. But
Well, because you're contributing to the community. Too,
yeah,
you know?
so I probably got more breaks than the regular person did.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now, is there a particular moment that you can remember that was actually like the punch in the face moment where you're like, wow, this is fucked up. I shouldn't be, you know, like any particular thing you can think of.
No, to be honest with you, and I guess it's kind of sad, you know what I mean? I quit drinking shortly after I had my daughter. Excuse me. But, you know, alcoholism has such a grip on you, you know? And I was physically dying, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, when you drink as much as that I drank, you know, you start to deteriorate. And so, you know, it grabs a hold of you so hard that, you know, you're in a position where you know you're dying. Mm-hmm. You really do know you're dying. So, you know, you have to make that choice, you know. And believe it or not, I took the choice to die because I knew I couldn't stop, you know. And, you know, I've been to AA meetings and, you know, it was like, that fucking shit's for losers, you know what I mean? And so, I tried that a few times, and I knew people that were sober, and it was the same thing, hey, let's go to an AA meeting, it was like, fuck that, ain't, that's for weak people, but the thing of it is that I don't know, I drank like a gallon of wine, bunch of Valiums, and probably enough that would kill
Yeah.
the
Somebody like me to be been dead.
yeah, and I was supposed to go into rehab, and I had a business going, even though I drank and partied like I did, I built a business, you know what I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't about to give it up. So I thought about going into rehab, and I was kind of supposed to go to the rehab the following day, and I woke up in the morning. I said, I just can't do that. I work too hard, and I had a fairly good business,
Mm-hmm.
even though I drank. And for some reason or other, I did go to an AA meeting that night, and what happened was, I didn't drink. I didn't have a drink, so. I went again the next night, and I didn't have a drink, and I started getting into the pattern of, okay, you learn things, you know what I mean, like one day at a time, and all that stuff, but I hated it. I did hate it, and I hated everybody in it.
Yeah, I'd argue that probably most people getting into that do, right? At first.
Yeah, because they're not like you.
Right.
You know what I mean? These people, they're not, you don't trust people unless they are drunk,
Mm-hmm.
when you are drunk, you know what I mean? So you didn't really, again, you think it's for weak people. So, I probably went for a year and a half without talking to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of a mean-looking guy, so
Right.
nobody wanted to talk to me anyhow. But,
The guy in the back of the room just giving everybody the stink eye. Like,
Yeah.
Don't try to talk to me.
Exactly. And after the meeting, I would just take off book.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? But I think that really, when you think about it, okay, or when you start getting involved and drop your guard a little bit, you find out that those people are the same as you.
Mm-hmm.
They were the same people that were out there partying, knocking things down with their cars, getting in fist fights in a bar. So the only difference was they weren't drinking. So once you realize that, then you could start a relationship with these people,
Mm-hmm.
and then you start realizing that you can have a good time without alcohol.
Right. And you probably made some good friends. Now, are any of those people still friends today that you met?
Yeah, from time to time, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And some people here that work for me, I don't want to really mention their names, and I don't think they would have a hard time. I don't think they'd have a problem talking about it, but it's not my place to do
Exactly.
that.
Exactly. So is that the best support you found was when you started actually opening up at those meetings?
Yeah, the thing of it is that you can't. It's like you have to change your whole life. You can't. It's just not a matter of stopping drinking. You can't, because your attitude is still of that what it was before, and it'll always lead back to that. So it's kind of like you do have to change your life completely.
Well, yeah, because your whole life revolved around that, right?
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, that one thing that was your life is gone, and then it's like, oh wow, who's this family around me? Who's the, because it's like your eyes were open into a world that you hadn't been open to for how long? Like years, right?
Many years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the hardest thing was to do is that when you're like a somebody that's I don't feel that you don't know any better, you know what I mean? So people, all the guys that work for me drank. They didn't stop drinking, and I had said I was going to stop drinking 100 times, and I'd go 2 days. So
right.
to them it
and
was
so
a
they
joke.
were like, yeah, whatever,
It's
dude.
a joke,
Yep.
So we would be on a job, and they would say, hey, go out and get a couple bottles of whiskey or whatnot, and you really don't know any better, so you go do it, So you're in the store and you got this bottle of whiskey in your hand, and you're saying, "Man, should I do that?" You know what I mean? It's like so tempting. But for me, it was, I, I didn't drink for like a week, so it was like I didn't want to blow it. You know what I mean? Because I accomplished something.
Right, and you felt a personal accomplishment.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I had to keep telling those people, my friends at the time, that I didn't stop drinking. I'd tell them that, I'll probably drink tomorrow. You know what I mean? Because that's the same thing in AA. It's a day at a time, and it really is. Get past the day. You might not be alive tomorrow anyhow. So that's the mentality I had. So if I get by today, I'm okay. So that's what I do at my work. As I said, instead of saying, I'm not drinking anymore, I just said, well, I'm going to probably drink tomorrow. I'll have a drink tomorrow. You know what I mean? I'll have a drink tomorrow. And it kind of made it easier, because in their mind, they didn't want to lose a drinking buddy. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so as time went by, months went by, and I just never really told anybody what I was doing. And then it just got to the point where they were like, "No, this guy really isn't.
Yeah,
this
he's not
guy's
drinking
really
anymore."
not drinking." And then you get to the point where you realize that you have a choice, and that you don't need to be a subject to that. So, instead of going and getting that whiskey, you stop doing that. Instead of letting people stay in your shop and continue to drink, you stop that. So whereas before you think, well, because it's kind of like, if that guy stopped smoking, or I stopped smoking, that guy should stop smoking. But I didn't have that mentality.
Right. It's kind of like, yeah, and I know what that's about. So did you inspire any of them through what you did to actually stop?
I did.
Just through being an example?
I did. I had young guys working for me, and that went off to rehabs. But, I think a lot of people did look up to me, being a business owner or whatnot. But you have to be a power of example. You can't force people to do something that they don't want to do. So they have to look at you and say that's what they want, And then I come in and make the suggestions and try to help them work through it.
Right.
But I don't ever tell anybody, you got to stop drinking. That's a choice they have to make.
Well, and if you think about it, through the AA meetings, had one person walked up to you and forced you into a conversation when you weren't ready for that, that could have changed the whole situation, right? Because you weren't ready. And so it's the same thing. Like, if they're not ready to fix it, nobody's going to fix it for you.
Yeah.
So if they would have come up and talked to you, you would have been like, I'm not coming anymore. And that could have been...
And it's a common problem, and it's called enabling, And it's tough. It's really, like my partner that died, at one point his wife threw him out, and, it wasn't good, but he had his mother and father that lived up here, and he lived in Rockland. And so she threw him out, but Mom and Dad said, I'll feed him dinner, and you can stay here, and they call it loving somebody to death, because it's really not helping him. It's just prolonging.
Yep.
And that's what happened. You know what I mean? It's just, So, but the reality is, it's easy to say, throw the guy out, but it's hard to do, because most people say they take. They feel that they're responsible for the person that died or whatnot. So it's kind of a no-win situation. But the proper way to do it is, let them figure it out.
Yeah.
Because it's all about reaching your bottom. You know what I mean? It's like you have to. Some people don't have such a low bottom. You know what I mean? For me, it was the pits of hell. You know what I mean? Other people get it a lot quicker, and they're able to, stop drinking or whatnot. But that wasn't my case.
Well, I reached mine when I saw it affect another family member of mine. So
Yeah.
I was going with him, and then when I saw how far down he went, I stopped. So it's like everybody has a different level that's going to wake them up
Yeah.
to what can happen.
It's the threshold of pain, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And I like pain.
Yeah.
Infidelity.
Yeah. So, do you ever have a moment of weakness where you're just like if you're over at a bar or something and you see somebody drinking, do you like, man, I remember the taste of that. That would be kind of nice to
Well,
sip on.
for years, you know, they call it people, places, and things. You know,
Mm-hmm.
for years I didn't go near a bar. I didn't go near anybody that was drinking because, you know, it was a temptation for me, and I didn't feel that I could do that. Today I can. Today, if I have go to a bar and sit down, you know, I can do it. I lived the horror, you know, and I always believe that I can drink.
Mm-hmm.
I never say that I'm incapable of drinking, because once you do that, you know, a lot of guys go, well, I haven't drank in years, and it'll be different, but it's not different.
Right.
It's a progressive disease.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't ever, you know, it's 31 years, and your life changes, you know, and then you start accomplishing things.
Mm-hmm.
You feel better about yourself.
So you've been sober 31 years?
31 years.
Wow. So
January 7th, 1985. So I'm going on 32 years.
that's freaking awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing. Man.
Yeah. So when you look at that and you look at the progression, so you look at your lifeline while you were drinking, and then look at it after. What's been the difference with your relationships and everything since then? I mean, you probably still got some, like you said, that are bruised, but like building new relationships from that point forward.
Well, again, you know what I mean? It has to do with learning how to live life over like
Mm-hmm.
normal people, I guess, if you want to say, you know,
Yeah.
you know, people that grew up in a somewhat of a normal environment, you know. So, you know, your mind clears out. You know, your morals are better. You know what I mean? Your just your whole outlook on life, what's important and what's not important. From you look back of the things you did wrong to try and correct them, and I think at a day at a time, you do that.
Mm-hmm. Now, you have a huge love for animals.
Yeah.
Did that exist all your life, or was that something that was kind of like something that came out of your new experiences?
No. I was from a little kid. I had a
Yeah.
dog. Yeah, that was always actually the love of my life. You know.
Uh-huh. And did that help? Was that part of what helped you? I mean.
No, I don't think that's part of what helped me. But you know, it's like growing up, there was no relationship with my mom or dad,
Mm-hmm.
so there was nothing there ever. So the dog was the most important thing for you, because the dog gave you unconditional love.
Right. Listen to every story.
So yeah. So to me, it's still that way today.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, through the years, you know, I've always loved animals, and I've always had dogs, and I have 5 right now, and a lot of animals. You know, I think the animals, this is unconditional love. You know what I mean? They don't expect a lot out of you.
There's
you know?
just something about animals that's because there's no expectations. You don't have to. You know, you can be an asshole one day and they don't care.
No, they still love you.
Yep.
You know.
Any more questions coming in from the?
Yeah, we got a lot of people though saying thank you for being honest
Yeah.
and putting their stories out there as well. One question is, what did you lose during your time drinking that you wishing you had in your life now?
Virginity doesn't count.
Okay. You know, what did I lose?
What, due to your drinking, that you wish you had back in your life now?
You know, as bad as it was, I don't really have a lot of regrets, because I think that, you know, there's a reason why you go through that. There was a lot of damage done, but I don't really look back at the damage that was done. I look at the things that I can do today to more or less correct that. And so, you know, I've been around a long time, that I've experienced a lot of things, but I think that makes you who you are.
Yeah, and I agree, because it's like
Yeah.
there are so many paths you could have gone down, and had you gone down a different path, you might not be sitting where you are right now. You know.
No, and I think it's today, you know, I didn't never know I was going to be on TV. So like, fuck, that was the furthest thing from my mind. But as you go along and you realize that you can have a tremendous effect on people, that to me, that's what it's all about. Making a difference in people's lives. You know?
And just like you said, if you can change one person's life.
Yeah, so that's, that's the reward in it.
So, I already asked you how many years sober now. So those are the questions that I had. Is there any suggestions you could give people who might be still dealing with some kind of addiction? What you said that they have to make the decision themselves, but what can start that thought process of making that decision?
Well, I think that that's again something, maybe you learned a little bit from me, but it's a decision that you have to make. But the one thing that I did learn is never say never, because I always said I could never get sober, and if I could get sober, anybody can. So that might be something to look at.
And never say never about the AA, because you said that ended up helping.
Yeah, I firmly believe in the 12-step program. I mean, you could spend all your money on rehabs and stuff like that, but I don't think you're going to get what you can get out of a 12-step program. But that doesn't mean that you might not you might need a rehab.
So we're going to be doing these Q&As every Wednesday at 10 a.m. So once this is over, there's going to be a live subscribe button. You're going to want to click on that, and that's going to notify you every time we go live. And this kind of stuff is awesome, and this is the kind of content that you guys, this is raw and real. And we're going to be we got it on the shooting schedule, go to Yonkers next week, so we're going to go to your home and stuff, and people are going to get to see it, kind of bring them into Paul's world a little bit more. So you guys can see where this all started. So make sure you go to occshow.com and opt in there, and that'll get you on updates, and you'll get exclusive behind-the-scenes stuff. And we thank all of you that have already opted in there. Any more questions really quick before we wrap it up?
A few questions that seem to be within the same flavor. How do you feel your drinking affected your relationship with your kids?
It affected it very negatively. Yeah. I think that it leaves scars, and I think that they'll probably be there maybe forever, but I think that it could have always been that way, but I think that when you get sober and you recognize that and you try to make amends for it, it gets better.
And follow up, how is your relationship now with your children?
I think that now my kids are, Paulie's 42 and Mikey's 38, and they're all older now, and I think the relationship is good. I have 6 grandchildren. It probably could be better, but I'm okay with it. You know what I mean? We have Thanksgiving, we have Christmas. Everybody has a busy life anyhow. Paul, he's got his business. My son Dan still has a steel business. My daughter's a nurse. Mikey, listen, Mikey does a lot of good things too. He's out doing charity work now, and he works for me full time for the last couple of years, and I love having him around, and I think that he's grown up a lot, and he's a funny guy, but he takes things a lot more serious now. So he's grown a lot too.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I mean, I watched the show, so I kind of knew Mikey from the show. But getting to know him and talk to him, he's very
a smart guy.
Yeah, he really is. I mean, and a musician and an artist.
Yeah.
So he's very talented. So yeah, he's been
Love
a hoot. And their show is tonight. Mikey's still on the road, but him and Nick are doing a show, and that's going to be on tonight on the Nick or Mikey's page. So if you're not following them, go follow them. So tune in next week. We're going to do this again Wednesday at 10 a.m. So live subscribe. And again, occshow.com if you're interested in seeing the show come back. We're doing it completely different. Talk about that a little bit. Like how...
Yeah, I mean, the thing of it is that most of the comments that I get is, when you're going to do a new show, when you're going to do a new show. I think our show had an effect on a lot of people, mostly positive, I think, and we had, I see kids that, that are teenagers now, that were young kids that are still talking about the show. So I think that, things have changed in the TV world. There's not them many shows, reality shows, and people are kind of moving away from that. So I think what we're going to do now is we are going to create a show that will be available to everybody. But we're shooting the show just like whether it be Discovery or whatnot. So when the show comes out, it'll be about building bikes. It'll be about my life. It'll be it'll I believe it'll be it's more interesting than the show that we originally were very successful. I think that it's time for change, so it won't be the same identical show, but we'll still be building bikes. We might do a few cars. There's relationships involved. So I really think that I'm really excited about it, and I think that whoever's out there watching this should be looking forward to it, because I sure as hell am.
Yeah, and it's kind of grassroots. It's like back to the roots, like everything. I think it's really cool because watching the show, it was all the big bikes and stuff, which are really cool. But this is more in a deeper look into your life, into where you came from, into what happened, and then people don't realize that a lot of the bikes that you do are just like old shovelhead rebuilds or things like that, which is really cool. So
well, nothing ever remains the same,
right?
So what was then is not now. So
yep.
Way back up.
Yeah.
But I guess that's the experiences that you experience in life.
Yep, the ebbs and flows. So, all right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next Wednesday at 10 a.m. If you have any comments, keep posting them on there. I'll be watching the comments. Jim over here and I monitor those things, and we'll be responding. So if you see responses, Jim and I over here are the guys you're hearing from, and we're trying to respond to everybody. So, again, occshow.com if you want more info on the show, and we'll see you next week.
Be there.
Or be square. I think that's how it goes, right?